Have you ever watched your pet do something so bizarrely inexplicable that you started to wonder if maybe they know something you do not? Like maybe your cat staring at a completely empty corner of the room at 3 in the morning is not creepy at all, but actually a sign of superior perception that your feeble human brain cannot even begin to comprehend? Well, buckle up, because today we are diving into 5 animal behaviors that have left the entire scientific community scratching their heads and muttering things like, quote, "This should not be possible," end quote. These are not fringe mysteries either. These are well-documented phenomena that researchers have spent decades trying to understand and still cannot fully explain. By the end of this video, you will look at the animal kingdom with a mixture of awe, confusion, and maybe just a tiny bit of fear. Let us begin. Picture this: a butterfly, a creature that weighs about as much as a paperclip and has a brain smaller than a grain of rice. Now imagine telling that butterfly to navigate from southern Canada to a very specific forest in central Mexico. A journey of roughly 3,000 miles through mountains, deserts, cities, and weather systems that would make your local meteorologist cry. And now imagine that butterfly has never been to Mexico. Neither have its parents, or its grandparents. In fact, the last generation of its family that made this journey lived 4 generations ago. This is the annual migration of the monarch butterfly, and it makes absolutely no sense. Every autumn, millions of monarchs leave their summer homes in the northern United States and Canada and fly south to the same 12 mountain peaks in the Oyamel fir forests of Mexico. Some of these butterflies will travel up to 3,000 miles over 2 months. They will navigate around the Great Lakes, avoid the worst weather patterns, and somehow all end up clustering on the exact same trees their great-great-grandparents used. Scientists call this multi-generational migration. I call it witchcraft with wings. Here is where it gets even stranger. Researchers have discovered that monarchs use a combination of the sun's position and the Earth's magnetic field to navigate. They have a time-compensated sun compass in their antennae of all places that adjusts for the sun's movement across the sky throughout the day. They also appear to have some kind of magnetic sensing capability that helps them orient themselves even on cloudy days. But here is the thing: knowing how they sense direction does not explain how they know where to go. The information about that specific forest in Mexico cannot be learned because they have never been there. It is not taught by parents because the butterflies that make the southward journey are several generations removed from the ones that left Mexico the previous spring. This navigational knowledge is somehow encoded in their DNA, and we have no idea how genetic information can contain something as complex as turn left at Texas, then head toward that mountain range you have never seen. Scientists have put monarchs in flight simulators. They have tracked them with tiny radio transmitters. They have done genetic analyses and neurological studies. And still the fundamental question remains: how does a creature with about 1 million neurons compared to your 86 billion know exactly where to find a forest it has never visited based on information that was passed down through generations it never met? Your smartphone gets confused when you walk into a parking garage. But these butterflies are out here running biological navigation software that we cannot even reverse engineer. Honestly, it is a little embarrassing for us as a species. Speaking of emotional intelligence that puts humans to shame, let us talk about elephants. Specifically, let us talk about how elephants process death in ways that have left researchers both fascinated and slightly uncomfortable about humanity's supposed emotional superiority. When an elephant dies, the members of its herd do not simply walk away. They gather around the body. They touch it with their trunks. They rock back and forth in what can only be described as mourning. They have been observed covering dead elephants with leaves and branches almost like a burial ritual. And here is where it gets really interesting. They produce sounds, but not the trumpeting calls we typically associate with elephants. They produce infrasound. These are vocalizations below the range of human hearing, typically between 1 and 20 hertz, that can travel for miles across the savanna. What are they saying in these frequencies we cannot hear? We genuinely do not know. We know they are communicating because other elephants many miles away will stop what they are doing and orient toward the source of these calls. We know the acoustic patterns are different from their normal communication because researchers have analyzed the frequencies and found distinct signatures. but we cannot translate them. It is like knowing someone is giving a eulogy but not speaking the language. Even stranger is what elephants do years after a death. They return to the bones of their dead relatives. They visit these sites and spend time touching the remains with their trunks, particularly the skull and tusks. They can identify the bones of family members among the remains of other elephants. Studies have shown that elephants show significantly more interest in elephant bones than in the bones of other species, and even more interest in the bones of elephants they actually knew. They remember specific individuals for decades. Meanwhile, I cannot remember where I put my keys 10 minutes ago. And some people still question whether animals have complex emotional lives. The evidence suggests that elephants maintain social relationships across time and space in ways that require memory, emotional processing, and possibly even something resembling a concept of mortality. They might understand death better than the average college student who thinks being sad about a breakup for 2 weeks counts as processing grief. I say that with love, of course, but also with the recognition that elephants might be operating on a whole different level. Now let us talk about an animal that appears to have received the most overpowered sensory equipment in evolutionary history, and then apparently forgot to read the instruction manual. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the mantis shrimp. The mantis shrimp is already famous for having the fastest punch in the animal kingdom, capable of striking with the force of a .22 caliber bullet and generating cavitation bubbles that produce temperatures nearly as hot as the surface of the sun. But that is not the mystery we are here to discuss today. Today we are talking about their eyes. Humans have 3 types of color receptors called cones in our eyes. These allow us to see roughly 10 million different colors by combining red, green, and blue light in various proportions. The mantis shrimp has 16 types of color receptors. 16. They can see ultraviolet light, infrared light, and theoretically a spectrum of colors that would make a rainbow look like a grayscale photograph. Scientists initially thought this meant mantis shrimp saw the most ridiculously vibrant, detailed, colorful world imaginable. Like living inside a fireworks display designed by someone who had strong opinions about hue saturation. But here's the twist that nobody expected. When researchers actually tested mantis shrimp color discrimination, they discovered something baffling. Mantis shrimp are worse at distinguishing between similar colors than humans are. A creature with 16 color receptors is being outperformed by animals with 3. This makes absolutely no sense. The current best theory is that mantis shrimp do not actually process color the way we do. Instead of comparing signals from different receptors and calculating the precise wavelength like our brains do, mantis shrimp might simply recognize colors directly without processing. Like having 16 labeled buttons instead of one sophisticated computer. This would be faster but less precise. But this is still just a theory. We do not actually know why evolution would give an animal the most advanced color-sensing hardware in the known universe, and then install what appears to be budget software. It is like nature handed out a supercomputer and then forgot to include the operating system. Or like winning the lottery and then realizing you do not actually know how to deposit checks. The mantis shrimp has capabilities that we can barely comprehend, and yet apparently has no idea what to do with most of them. Somewhere out there is a mantis shrimp looking at a sunset with 16 types of color receptors and probably thinking, yep, that sure is orange, I guess. Now let us move on to an animal that many of you live with and might want to look at a little differently after this segment. Your dog might be running diagnostics on the entire universe while you think it is just begging for treats. Dogs have been documented doing things that science cannot fully explain. There are verified cases of dogs detecting cancer in their owners, sometimes before medical equipment can find the tumors. There are seizure alert dogs that somehow know an epileptic episode is coming 10 to 20 minutes before it happens. There are stories from around the world of dogs acting strangely hours before earthquakes, often before any seismological equipment registers unusual activity. And nobody really knows how they do it. The leading hypothesis for cancer detection involves smell. Dogs have up to 300 million olfactory receptors compared to about 6 million in humans. The part of their brain devoted to analyzing smells is proportionally 40 times larger than ours. Cancer cells produce volatile organic compounds, and it is possible that dogs can detect these at concentrations that would be like finding a single drop of a substance in an Olympic swimming pool. But possible and proven are different things. We know dogs can be trained to detect cancer with surprisingly high accuracy. Some studies show accuracy rates above 90%. We just do not know exactly what they are smelling or how their brains process that information into what appears to be a deliberate alert. Seizure prediction is even more mysterious. Some dogs can warn their owners of upcoming seizures with no training whatsoever. Theories include subtle changes in their owner's body chemistry, electrical activity they somehow sense, or behavioral microchanges invisible to human observers. But none of these theories fully account for the accuracy and consistency that some dogs demonstrate. And earthquakes? Dogs have been reported acting anxious, barking excessively, or refusing to go outside hours before seismic events. This phenomenon has been recorded across cultures for centuries. Some researchers think dogs might detect early seismic waves that precede the main quake or changes in static electricity or ground vibrations too subtle for human perception. But again, we are speculating. The evidence is largely anecdotal and controlled studies have been inconclusive. So the next time your dog ignores your command to sit, consider the possibility that they are not being disobedient. They are simply busy processing information about the fundamental state of reality that your limited human senses cannot even perceive. Your dog is not ignoring you. Your dog is running a full diagnostic on the space-time continuum, and frankly, your request to do a cute trick can wait. Finally, let us talk about crows. Because if there is one animal that should make you reconsider your standing in the intellectual hierarchy of Earth, it is the crow. Crows remember faces, not just for days or weeks, but for years. Researchers at the University of Washington conducted a study where they wore distinctive masks while capturing and banding crows. For years afterward, crows would mob and scold anyone wearing those masks, even crows that had not been alive during the original captures. The grudge was passed down. Generations of crows learned to hate a specific face from crows who witnessed the original offense. This is essentially crow culture. Crow oral history. A crow tradition of hatred for a specific human visage maintained across multiple generations. They remember kindness, too. There are documented cases of crows bringing gifts to people who regularly feed them. Small, shiny objects, buttons, pieces of glass, and in one famous case, a tiny heart-shaped pendant. A girl in Seattle received dozens of gifts from neighborhood crows over years of feeding them. The crows apparently evaluated the relationship, decided it was worth maintaining, and began offering tribute. What we do not fully understand is the cognitive process behind these behaviors. How do crows communicate specific facial features to other crows? What neurological mechanisms allow them to hold a grudge for years? Why do some crows give gifts while others do not? These birds are keeping more detailed social records than most humans maintain on LinkedIn. They are tracking relationships, evaluating reciprocity, and making decisions about social investment with a brain that weighs about 0.4 ounces. Crows have been observed using tools, solving multi-step puzzles, and appearing to plan for future events. They have demonstrated what looks suspiciously like metacognition, which means awareness of their own thought processes. And yet we cannot fully explain how a bird brain produces behavior this sophisticated. The architecture is completely different from mammalian brains. The neural pathways evolved separately, and somehow crows arrived at similar cognitive capabilities through an entirely different biological route. So, where does science go from here? Researchers around the world are working on these mysteries using some genuinely creative approaches. Butterfly scientists have built elaborate flight simulators to test Monarch navigation under controlled conditions. They manipulate magnetic fields and light exposure to see how butterflies respond. They have even tried transplanting antennae between butterflies to test which body parts are essential for the compass function. The experiments are painstaking, the results are incremental, and the butterflies remain uncooperative about explaining their secrets. Elephant researchers are deploying infrasound recording equipment across African savannas, building massive databases of elephant vocalizations. They are using artificial intelligence to analyze patterns in the frequencies, hoping to crack something like an elephant language. Progress is slow, but the data is accumulating. Mantis shrimp researchers are building elaborate color discrimination tests and doing neurological imaging, trying to figure out how a brain processes 16 channels of color information. The shrimp keep punching the equipment. It is a challenging field. Dog cognition labs are conducting controlled studies on cancer detection and seizure prediction training dogs while monitoring exactly what chemical or behavioral cues they respond to. The challenge is that dogs do not explain their methods, so researchers have to infer everything from behavior. It is like trying to reverse engineer a recipe by watching someone cook with a blindfold on. And crow researchers are running increasingly elaborate experiments on facial recognition, tool use, and social learning. There's actually a lab where researchers wear different masks to track how crows categorize human faces. The crows have probably developed complex theories about why the humans keep changing their faces. We may never know what those theories are. The brilliant scientists working on these problems are simultaneously comforting and concerning. Comforting because very smart people are on the case. Concerning because very smart people have been on the case for decades, and we still do not have complete answers. These mysteries might stay mysterious for a while, and honestly, that is kind of wonderful. We live on a planet where butterflies run multi-generational navigation software that outperforms our technology, where elephants may have developed concepts of mortality and mourning that rival human emotional sophistication, where mantis shrimp have sensory capabilities that remain mostly theoretical even to themselves, where dogs might perceive dimensions of reality that we cannot even measure, and where crows are keeping detailed records of every human who has ever wronged them and possibly planning something. The animal kingdom is weird. It is beautiful, strange, and constantly humbling for anyone who thinks humans have figured everything out. These mysteries remind us that intelligence and perception take many forms, that evolution has produced solutions to problems we did not know existed, and that the world is full of things we have not explained yet. So here's my request to you. Go look at your pet. Look at them with new levels of respect and maybe just a little bit of suspicion. They might know things about earthquakes, things about the magnetic field, things about that corner of the room they keep staring at. If you enjoyed this journey through the unexplainable animal kingdom, please hit that subscribe button so you do not miss future explorations of the strange and wonderful world we live in. Drop a like if you learned something new today, and leave a comment telling me which of these mysteries surprised you the most, or which animal behavior you think needs more investigation. I read the comments, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, and maybe be nicer to the crows in your neighborhood, just in case.